Masked MMA here, and today I'm going to be doing my predictions for UFC Fight Night, Alberta, Moreno versus Albazi, and Blanchfield versus Namajunas. Now, I am a bit behind on this, actually quite a bit behind, but I had some complications, but we're here now, and we're going to go through the entire card. This is this is a mid card. It's so mid, it's scary. That's gonna be the title here, but I mean, it is. It's truly scary how mid it is. There's a lot of decisions on this card, I think. There's gonna be a lot of decisions. And with that being said, let's get into it. I'm a little surprised that this one got pushed down to the beginning. But it's a women's MMA fight, so what do you expect? Um, we have Jamie Lynn Horth versus Ivana Petrovic. Now, I'm actually surprised how much of an underdog Ivana is. I expected her to be the slight favorite, but oh well. I actually think that's a good thing because I'm going with Petrovic by decision. Not KO. Decision, I think. Um, she has the reach and height advantage, and that usually is just an objective advantage in MMA, let's be honest. And she is 4 years younger. In a sport like MMA for women, it's usually going to be generally, I would say, the younger. Um, but, actually with women's MMA, it's like the heavier weight classes of MMA. It's not as consistent. You'd often see some 36-year-olds getting wins, and even though it's like a split decision, it could have went either way. It's usually the correct decision, so I don't know. Maybe she'll get it as a moderate favorite, although I'm still quite surprised by that. But her last win was an arm triangle, and she has had some rear naked chokes, but she's had a split when she fought someone with some decent experience. And seeing as she in Veronica Hardy beat Jamie Lynn Horth, I don't think that Veronica Hardy's that good. She's always getting split decisions or close unanimous decisions. So I would have to go with Petrovic. I think she's a little better than Horth. And we'll see, though. Next is Chad Anheliger versus Cody Gibson. Now here is a fight which, honestly, I am both surprised how much people on Tapology are picking Chad, but I mean Gibson actually. I'm surprised how little people are picking Chad. I'm both surprised by that, and I'm honestly 50-50 on. I think that they're both 37 here, and 5'10", 5'6", 64-inch reach, 71-inch reach. Now, even though the reach and height is going to be a huge problem for Chad, I do think that he's going to get it done by decision as well. The thing is, Cody Gibson looked awful against Miles Johns. Now, that was Miles Johns, and we've seen that he's actually okay at fighting. We've seen that he's pretty good. He fought another guy with a pretty good record. He was like 29-6. Miles Johns fought a 29-6 guy, Brazilian. I'm not quite sure the exact guy he fought, but he looked pretty good in that one. And obviously in hindsight, that was actually not a terrible loss, but it's the way he looked in that fight. And that's the reason why I actually thought that he would lose against Brian Kelleher, because I thought that Brian Kelleher, he, although is quite trash at fighting, if we're being honest, he is a veteran and he was in the UFC longer. So I just thought that he would be able to win a decision on Gibson. But now we have Chad, who, although is also very old, he has been through less fights as a Brian Kelleher. He has probably a better chin going into this. He's coming off of a pretty good win, I would say. Um, yeah, and even though it was decision, I would expect Chad to just rely on grappling where it counts, maybe just stalling up against the fence, possibly. And I think he has slightly better boxing. So, yeah, I think he would land more, if only a little bit. And next we have, see, lots of decisions on this card. I'm saying it's gonna be a very mid card, and that's why I titled it so mid. It's scary because Halloween, I'm a bit off on the scheduling there. I should have done this a day back, but it was Halloween. I had stuff to do, so we're here now. We're uploading this a little late, but it is what it is. Slight favorite in Sydney. I'm probably butchering that name. And then Garrett Armfield. Much easier to say there. I actually had these written down. I don't know where that is now though, but I had all these picks written down. I usually write them down before I pick these on Tapology and on this YouTube channel here. By the way, Masked MMA is the YouTube channel here, and Mask of MMA is my Tapology in case you want to see any predictions on there. I think that although they're pretty close as well in certain stats like age and record, I think Armfield is more proven in the UFC, and he's a slight underdog, and I would take that. Again, the reach and height advantage is not going to Garrett Armfield, which is worrying. But I just feel like skill-wise, he's more proven. Now, David Onama is looking good, so that's not a bad loss. And Brady Hindstand, sure, he's not like the greatest competition either, but well, no, I don't mean either. Onama is actually quite good, but Brady Hindstand submission, I mean, activity as well, I believe. Yeah, 9 months ago. I think, yeah, he fought on the Canadian card, where Sean Strickland and DDP fought, so yeah, I think that he is, and 2 times actually, 2 times. He has a better schedule. I just feel like he's going to be more ready coming into this, probably 29, 28, or 30, 27. Maybe it could be a pretty good war, honestly. Maybe it won't be mid, but 3 decisions, I don't know. Yeah. Now we're getting to something that I am actually interested in. Alexander Romanov versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Now, I'm actually surprised that it's both even on this website here in Tapology, because I saw on the UFC website that I believe Romanov is the slight underdog. And I would take that, and I will take this as an even, because I think that Romanov, and even Tapology recognizes it, I think that although he's been losing Romanov, I think that he is more proven in his boxing, and I don't think that this will be taken to the ground. I feel like they're both too good in the grappling, although they're not great, as we've seen in the Jailton Almeida fight, but for heavyweights, they're alright, I think. And, you know, he in Rodrigo Nascimento hasn't been able to get anything on these last few opponents of his. They've all been very close decisions. And so we see in Alexander Romanov's recent career, yeah, it was a decision against Blagoy Ivanov as well, but this was a clear-cut 30-27 if you ask me. I watched that fight, and his boxing looked very crisp in that fight, and even mixed in the takedowns, and he stalled up against the fence a little bit at times, which was great for getting the win. Not the most entertaining, sure, but he does what he has to win, and he fought up against guys who are like top 10, and the the uh the grappling is like gonna cancel out in my opinion. Like I don't think he's gonna gas like he did against Volkov, and Jailton Almeida is just a lab specimen. So the thing is, it's just another decision. I say it gets exciting here because it's ranked opposition, but that's as exciting as it gets, to be honest. Maybe it'll be decent boxing, but yeah, good win for Romanov there, I think. And here we go. Finally, a finish is what I'm picking. I'm not saying it will happen, but that's what I'm going for here. We have 13, no, not 13, 15 and 5 in Zalal, but Zalal has had some good wins outside of the UFC, and now he's coming back with two good wins against Jarno Aarons and Billy Quarantillo. And Billy Quarantillo, although Jarno Aarons is no longer in the UFC, Billy Quarantillo, he was looked at as a decent prospect outside of the rankings, although he was quite old. He was 36 going into that, I believe. So he wasn't necessarily a young up-and-coming prospect, but before he fought Edson Barboza, he was looked at as a prospect, and there were certain people picking him into going into that fight. But then when we look at Jack Shore here, I think the moderate underdog is justified. There have been some other MMA YouTubers that have been saying that Jack Shore is a bantamweight and he really shouldn't be at featherweight, and I agree. I think that I saw him on the weigh-ins, the live weigh-ins, and although he looks better, for sure, he does look a little bit more like a bantamweight this time. He is still not quite got the frame for a featherweight. And Makwan Amir Khani is not really a good name on his resume, and he has no really notable wins. So, I mean, sure, he looked kind of good at bantamweight, but when he's gone up against some decent competition like Brito and Ricky Simone, it's just been problems, honestly. And I think that they have both kind of exposed his sort of NPC style. He's not really willing to push when it gets hard. I think that Zalal is probably going to get, I will actually say, maybe a second round submission this time. In the Jarno Aarons fight, he got a first round submission, but I think that in this fight, Jack Shore is going to put up a decent fight on the grappling side of the fight. So, slight height and reach disadvantage as well. So if this goes to a decision, I would probably favor Zalal as well, because even though he's quite passive on the feet, he has some good kicks. We even saw that in the Ilia Topuria fight with Zalal. I remember that fight. I've watched it quite a few times. He, in the third round, did throw quite a few kicks when Ilia was gassing. So, yeah, honestly, I think he could win a decision as well. Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. Now, Charles Jourdain, slight favorite, and Victor Henry, slight underdog, near even it says. And 37, I don't like that. I think that although they're quite similar in attributes, I think that the opposition in Charles Jourdain's career has been more proven. John Silva went on to finish Drew Dober in the third round, and Sean Woodson then went on to beat Alex Caceres, which I thought was a robbery, but it was still a close fight. So you have Charles Jourdain, who has, although lost, he has gone up against some really good guys here, and Nathaniel Wood even. Some people even said that he won that one, as far as I'm aware. So, yeah, and he's just got the youth. I think that he still has time to improve. I think it's possible for him to hit the rankings. He's number 37 in the featherweight division, although he's actually moving down in the bantamweight division. I actually forgot about that. Yeah, I hope that weight cut doesn't actually prove to be a issue for him, but yeah, I just don't think that the opposition that Victor Henry has beat, especially with him aging, is gonna do enough for me to pick him. So maybe the weight cut will be an issue, but I'm gonna have to go with another decision for Charles Jourdain. Ariana Lipski, Jasmine Javiscus. I do not know how to say that name. Ju Jasudavicius. I think that's how you say it. Now, I know a lot of people are picking Lips. No, I mean, not Lipski. I know a lot of people are not picking Ariana Lipski. And I think that this one's a lot closer than people think. But I'm still going with Jasmine because, again, more proven. People are looking at Tracy Cortez like she's not top 10 or so, top 10, 11, 12 or so ranked bantamweight or flyweight, I think actually. Yeah, flyweight. People look at her like she's not ranked and has fought some decent opposition just because she kind of got embarrassed and had her fake eyelashes fly off her eyelids in the Rose Namajunas fight, but she was actually doing really good in the boxing, and I think that that is some really good experience. And then having in the span of a year, almost a year, having 3 fights, I think that's really good for Jasmine. And granted, Ariana Lipski's schedule has been quite good as well, but I think this ever so slight reach advantage and height advantage, although it's going to be so minute, it's probably not going to do much for Jasmine. It will help, and we also have to look at the fact that she has been winning. Now, granted, these aren't the greatest opposition, sure, but Miranda Maverick has now been looking great. She's fighting a lot, and she's actually looking to fight Tracy Cortez soon, and that one should be interesting. I think I might actually pick her against Tracy. And so the fact that she got a win on her, and then Darshchuk in the last Canadian cards fight that she had, and then another decision against the 6-0 prospect. I think that she's just been more proven, so I'm gonna go with Jasmine by decision. Another one. Can we get another decision here? Yes, we can. All right. As you can tell, both me and the Tapology fans of the UFC agree there are going to be a lot of decisions on this card, which is why it's so mid. Even though it's got a lot of ranked fighters on this card, it is mid because of how many decisions there will likely be. And yeah, I think this one's pretty simple. I think Ayman Zahavi is going to get this one done. We saw against Javid Bashrat, his boxing and takedown defense is awesome. Awesome. Well, it's good. And so if Pedro Munoz tries to take it to the ground, which he might become like a Glover Teixeira at the tail end of his career and try and take things to the ground. I think he'll fail at doing so. We saw that longer, taller strikers, which he is slightly taller and longer, 2.5 inch reach. That's not too bad. Like Kyler Phillips, although he's quite short, but nevertheless, we saw that he was outskilling Pedro Munoz. But then we saw that he lost to Rob Font in his next fight, and the UFC doesn't make any sense sometimes. Maybe he was on EPO or some sort of performance enhancer in the Pedro Munoz fight, but oh well. Marlon Vera, decision loss. Marlon Vera, I mean, we don't really look at him as a great top 10, top 15 right now. He hasn't been looking great lately. Chris Gutierrez, okay, sure, that one was all right, but let's be honest. He lost the third round, I believe, to leg kicks, and the second round was quite close. The only reason he won was because it was pretty close in the second, but he won a little bit off of landing more leg kicks, I believe, and he did get the knockdown in the first round. But other than the knockdown in the first round, making that round clear for him, he didn't really do anything else except for leg kicks when he got in range. So I mean, Sean O'Malley, sure, that was impressive how he kept it competitive, but that was 2 years ago. Sean O'Malley's definitely improved. Dominic Cruz, that one was a pretty fun fight. People forget, man, as Joe Rogan would say there. Dominic Cruz, I mean, where is he? Why isn't he fighting? Why isn't Dominic Cruz fighting? Fight Jose Aldo. I mean, everybody's saying that, right? If there ever was a time to have him fight Jose Aldo, now would be the time. But yeah, I just feel like he's gonna maybe implement a slightly better or slightly worse, but just enough to win type of Marlon Vera kind of performance, where he's just outboxing him for the most part with maybe a little bit of leg kicks, takedown defense on point. Yep. Mike Malott versus Trevin Giles. Now this one I'm actually seeing as a finish, whether it be KO or submission. All right. Well, I mean, let's just be honest here. It's good competition for the most part against Trevin Giles, but KO, submission, KO, his most recent losses, in fact, all of his losses, except for maybe one, were by KO and submission. Stoppage is not is it's not good. Stoppages are not what you want to see if you're going to pick a decent veteran. It's a sign of decline. And with Mike Malott, sure, he lost to Neil Magny, and that was an embarrassing way to lose. Let's just be honest. Um, he was doing great in that fight. He won the first 2 rounds. He kept it quite engaging in those rounds, and he just gassed. He just gassed. He couldn't move, and he gassed. I think that if the referee, he was definitely gassed, and I'm not complaining about the stoppage, but if the referee was a little bit more generous, maybe like a terrible ref, like like one that we've seen in the past, Bobby Green versus Jalen Turner style. I think that he could have survived to the bell if he kept turning and moving. If he offered up a little bit more resistance, possibly, but I mean, he has teared through the competition beforehand. I think he could get a KO here, but I think more likely what will happen is he'll drop Trevin Giles maybe once or twice, and then he'll sub him in the sequence thereafter. So yeah, I mean, Trevin Giles is both what's the word? He's both submittable and KOable. So yeah, that one is pretty clear to me. And then Marc-Andre Barriot, he this one it's gonna be another decision. I think it's pretty simple here. Dustin Stoltzfus, yeah, he's okay, I suppose. He's like mid. He's very mid for the UFC middleweight division. Fitting mid for the mid division. I mean, it really is mid. Like the division it's got some prospects for sure, especially lately. But the skills are kind of mid there, I must say. So middleweight is mid. Go figure. But we have yeah, I mean, they're pretty similar, honestly, except Dustin tries to implement a bit more of a kickboxing sort of style, a little bit more a kickboxing type heavy. Marc-Andre Barriou is more of a boxer. I think, honestly, yeah, the Joe Pyfer KO wasn't great, but we go back to Chris Curtis. Like, it's impressive that it got to a split decision with Chris Curtis. Both of the guys were pretty much boxing the entire time in the pocket. It was a good fight, decent fight, but he eventually lost, of course. But I think that he's just more proven. Like quite a few fighters on this card, it comes down to both of the fighters on a lot of the card is very similar, but it comes down to who's more proven. And Power Bar he just is. So, gonna go with him by decision. We have Caio Machado versus the Gorilla Brenson Ribeiro. And yeah, I can see why Ribeiro is being picked a lot here. I saw Machado's physique change, and it is incredibly impressive. And I mean, now that I'm seeing the odds, that's also quite impressive to see that people are actually picking Machado on the betting lines at least over him. I mean, or at least the matchmakers or the betting people, the people who make the betting lines have Machado as a favorite is quite the surprise to me because yes, he is, he's okay for a heavyweight, but Dontel May's loss isn't great. Dontel May's is quite bad if we're being honest. I mean, this is like the only loss he's had. I mean, the only win he's had in recent memory, Dontel May's. And Mick Parkin, he looked okay, but I mean, Mick Parkin, aside from the fact that he's got a lot of wins, he's not the most proven. He's mostly a decision guy, so. And then we see that, okay, yes, he lost to Minion Zhang, but he got eye poked. And it was a bit of a confusion involved there with the eye poke. And then we have this one was a decision where I thought that if he just got a little bit less sloppy with the takedown defense, he could have won. And then in his past fights, we're looking at some pretty good records otherwise, which he KOs. Ground and pound, hammer fists. He is 3 inches advantage in the reach. Like, I have to go with him. I think that he'll just I don't think that he'll get taken down, and so what we have left with is a stand-up fight, likely kickboxing, and I think that he's going to be better there, and he's going to get it in the late first round. Next we're getting to the end here, and another one. This one is actually going to be another heavyweight. No, the last one was light heavyweight, but this one's going to be another big KO, I think. Instead of round 1, I'm going with a round 2. And I'm going with Jonata Denise. Now, a lot of people are picking Lewis here, and I understand. I actually do understand it. But I think that most of these people are casuals, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think these people have heard enough about Denise, and they haven't seen his fights against Carl Williams. And the Austin Lane, can't believe I forgot his name, but I do remember watching both these fights, and Carl Williams will do anything he can to survive and get the takedown, so that's why that one was a decision. But, I mean, as far as all the other fights of Jonata Denise, they've all been KOs. He's been an insane kickboxer. He does have the half-inch reach advantage, but that's meaningless for the most part, if we're being honest. Now, the age is certainly worrying for Derek Lewis, and he has been KO'd by Tai Tuivasa, who is on like a 5-loss streak. That is not good. That is not good to be getting flatlined by Tai Tuivasa. He's been through far too many fights, and he's been KO'd by Sergey Pavlovich, who is still decent. And honestly, I think Denise is a much better kickboxer than De Lima. De Lima's decent, but he KO'd in the second round by leg kicks Junior Tafa. And Junior Tafa is, although he's an alright kickboxer, seemingly he does not know how to check kicks, and he took that on 1 week notice. A single week. And yeah, I just... Rodrigo Nascimento, as you heard previously on the card, I just don't rate his skills very highly. These are two guys that he beats that are... Sure, he KOs them, but they're not that... It's not like out cold KOs either. It's like TKOs. I feel like his power is overrated, Derek Lewis. The only one that was like really flatlined that was like kind of recent was like Chris Dawkins. And then for Carl Williams, I actually think he's really good. I think that the UFC just cut him because he's certainly boring. I think we can all agree there. And then Austin Lane, he was also going for the takedown. I think Derek Lewis is going to go for the takedown here. However, I don't think he'll be successful. Maybe in the first round he'll get some off. But I feel like he's going to gas trying a little bit. And then in the second round, Denise is going to get something similar to the Tai Tuivasa KO. He might even get an elbow. We're seeing throughout Denise's career that he's insanely patient. He lands a ton of leg kicks. I feel like he's just a better De Lima, Marcos Rodrigo De Lima. in every way, pretty much. And I think he's more responsible. He won't just go forward thinking that he's going to KO Derek Lewis in the first round. He'll be willing to get the decision, as we've seen in the Carl Williams fight. He knew that he didn't have to get the finish because he landed a ton of leg kicks in the first 2 rounds, and he was landing the more powerful shots. And yeah, De Lima just went at Derek Lewis. He just went forward, and his defense wasn't great. There was a knee that Derek Lewis could have landed right in the center, and I don't think that Denise will be that defensively irresponsible. So, yeah, honestly, I don't think that people recognize Denise's skills very much, and they should notice because Austin Lane even he had a good win against Robelas de Spain. People were thinking that he was going to be the next Francis Ngannou, I've heard, and now we see that Austin Lane is pretty good with the grappling. He tried to kickbox against Justin Tafa, but that wasn't it. So he's now applied a more grappling heavy game, and he tried that against Denise. But in the first round, he was just holding him. He was trying to hold him with every chance he got, and he was just laying on him. But then he gassed in the second round, and that was Denise's chance to explode. See, Denise is patient. He's willing to give up rounds, sort of like Ilia Topuria, but not quite as good, obviously. In fact, not nearly as good because heavyweight, obviously. But he is a kickboxer. He has kickboxing history, and he's quite good. So I feel like people are kind of blinded to the Derek Lewis aura that he's just a KO machine, and against anyone that's lower in the rankings or outside the rankings, he's just going to KO them. And it's just, they haven't watched enough of these prospects. So there we go there. All right, now we're going to go quickly with these two. We're going to go through these quite quick because, I mean, they're both decisions. Let's just be honest. If you expect to finish through these two fights, I think you'll be mistaken and surprised. I think Rose Namajunas gets this by decision. We saw that she had a close fight with a broken hand against Manon Fiorot. Some people even thought that the 30-27 was outrageous for Manon Fiorot. I think there's an argument, but I mean, the fact that she made it competitive with I believe it was a broken hand, and she had a split decision against Carla Esparza way back in the what was it? Yeah, 2 years, 5 months ago, UFC 274. It's just, that was then, this is now. Now she came back. She, this year, has 2 wins. Tracy Cortez, Amanda Ribas. These two were contenders in their own right, and some people were picking them. If you go back on Tapology, it was about 30% for each of them. And then Weili Zhang, she did really good against her, and look at Weili now. So we see Manon Fiorot, 50-45, Manon Fiorot did to Blanchfield. And all these other fights for Blanchfield are, we look back, the opposition just isn't that great. So yeah, that's a pretty obvious pick for me, I think, and a good underdog. And then we have Moreno versus Albazi. Now this one is going to be another decision for Moreno. I think that he is justified in being the slight favorite. I think this is a pretty good odds. I think maybe he should be a little bit lower though, because Albazi, I did hear that in his time off, he had some problems health-wise. So this is definitely adding to my pick. But I think that Albazi is actually kind of underrated. We see that Kai Kara France, he doesn't really lose to the top guys. The only guys that he has lost to recently is Brandon Moreno. As far as I can recall, that's like his last loss in like a couple years, or 3 or 4 even. Like, Kai Kara France is underrated for sure. He set up Steve Ercik very well for that knockdown and eventually TKO. So honestly, I understand it was a clear robbery for Albazi. Kai Kara France should have definitely won that, but it is what it is. He's now moving on to this fight, and a 31-year-old. He's actually older than Brandon Moreno. We have to keep that in mind. He's slightly shorter and shorter reach even. So we forget, like, we really do, about these fighters if they leave for a year. People are saying that we have some people here, even in Tapology, 33% are picking Albazi. And I'm not discrediting him. I think he has a chance. I think this will be a close fight. But people are forgetting that Brandon Moreno overall was in the majority of the 4 fights winning against Davis and Figueiredo. I would say. I think he won more rounds overall. And he was going on to win all 5 of the rounds in the 4th fight against Davis and Figueiredo. So when we count all that together, we talk about how he had a split decision against Royval and another split decision against Pantoja, which I actually thought was closer than people thought. Now, granted, Pantoja did win in my eyes, and so did Royval, but these are close fights against the best guys, the absolute best 2 guys. And we go to Albazi, and the best one he has is Kai Kara-France, which was a clear robbery. And Alessandro Costa, he's pretty good, but he's not even ranked right now. And the rest of his opponents are just... most of these guys are cut right now, I believe. So, I mean, these guys weren't rated as prospects. The only one is Kai Kara-France that was any bit good in the top of the division. I'm not discrediting all these guys. I'm just pointing out he was the only one that was ranked that he's actually beaten. Let's just be honest here. And I say beaten loosely because he honestly didn't. And then we have Kai Kara-France and Davison Figueiredo, who he legitimately beat in Moreno. And I don't think he's losing a step. People are saying, oh, he's getting old. He didn't look himself in the fight, in his last fight against Raw Dog Brandon Royval. And it's like, he's younger than Amir Albazi, so it's like, what are you talking about? I think he was just losing some motivation, and he just needed that sort of push to get back into it. It's been almost a year. He said he was going to take around a year off. Granted, he came back sooner than maybe he would have liked, but they needed a main event for Canada, and there's no real prospects in Canada that are ranked that are going to fight a ranked opposition for a main event. Maybe if Mallet just survived against Magny, but he couldn't do that. So Moreno, I think, is a pretty clear pick. People forget, man. He is a great decision merchant. He is the decision merchant as far as lately. Granted, they didn't go his way last time, and his most recent wins have been by stoppage. So I guess that's kind of a mute point. I gotta emphasize, though, he has had a lot of good. I mean, this is flyweight. There's a ton of decisions, but he's had a lot of point fights where he's looked insane. So yeah, Moreno decision. That is gonna be my picks. And I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe, like, and comment, please. Let's start some comments. Let's start some engagement here. Thank you. Have a good